Please join me in praying that I don't say something we all regret. These are dangerous times. Mr. President, are you sure about this? It's not a coincidence that in the scriptures poverty is mentioned more than 2,100 times.
Look in my eyes, what do you see?
These issues are as alive as they ever were.
Neon lights, Nobel Prize, when a mirror speaks, the reflection lies.
This is not about charity, it's about justice. Justice and equality are mates, aren't they? Justice always wants to hang out with equality, and equality is a real pain in the ass.
And the smiling face on your TV.
I changed the channel.
Oh, there's a law of compensation, and there's an accounting to be held, an accounting that shall make the depression of 1929 seem as a prosperity when it breaks upon.
Only you can set you free. The cult of personality.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
You gave me fortune. You gave me fame. You gave me power in your God's name.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaac Jasper, and welcome to Tin Media. You guys might know the Indigenous Nightmare podcast because that's kind of what this network started out as. I'm bringing it back under the Tin Media brand, and today's conversation is going to be centered around what the thumbnail is, what the SEO description is. Been a long week, and I think that we've all felt, people of color, a level of dehumanization, a level of selective outrage that we're seeing from individuals that we really thought were on our side. We really thought understood what anti-fascism meant in the wake of all of this. And so I'm going to be going over that, a little bit of Turning Point USA, what they're about, what Charlie Kirk was about. It's going to be very brief, mainly because I'm going to be sitting down with another prominent journalist by the name of Zainab Day. You guys might know her from Status Quo, plethora of other shows as well. We're going to be breaking this down together and going over certain aspects that we feel are more important, and also giving you guys a little bit of an update on what was happening while this was taking over the news airwaves. So again, like, share, subscribe, donate if you can. Our cash links are below. And if you're new to this channel, just look forward to other shows that will be coming back into the mix, giving an update on breaking the backboard. Got a little busy last week. We had something rolled out. We just didn't have the time to record it. We will be recording that as soon as possible. I want to say shout out to Fernando Cardenas, also Ikemba Ojore, Dr. Ikemba Ojore. They are the new members and co-hosts of Breaking the Backboard. And so we'll be back, all three of us together on screen when the time is right. I just wanted to get this video out there for the viewers, and also a little bit of update for them. So let's start off. Charlie Kirk was shot at Utah Valley University. He was shot in the neck, in the jugular. Pretty sure all of us seen the video. The video is on my Instagram if you guys want to take a look at that. It's an up-close video that has not been banned yet by Instagram, and I don't think will, because I've listed it as an educational video. So I want to, first start off by saying, that Charlie Kirk was a bigot. He was a Nazi. He was someone who wanted and advocated for the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. He was an individual that advocated for the rights of women to reproduce, to be put into the hands of a man, particularly a white man. He believed that black women were inferior or were in some case unintellectual compared to white women. These are all things that Charlie Kirk said himself, and we'll be going over some of it. Not all of it, because again, I'd like to save this for a sit down that I'm going to be having with Zanab Day. So let's just start off with, Charlie Kirk being the bigot that he is, and going over a little bit of the aspects that he was advocating for, even before his assassination. Now, one thing I want to start off with is, he was not a fan of empathy. First and foremost, and he elaborated this on many occasions. And so I just want to show this video for you guys. It's real quick, and shout out to the individual that clipped this that was on TikTok. I give props to every individual on TikTok right now that is spreading knowledge, that is spreading the truth, and that is advocating for every bit and piece of evidence that has been put out there, not just by Charlie Kirk himself, but also by other people that are seeing exactly what he was capable of doing with Turning Point USA, which wasn't just going to campuses and speaking to kids and riling up campuses, individuals, getting them to debate him. It was far more than that. This individual knew exactly what he was doing, and he had the right people in his corner to make that happen, to make that eugenics-based agenda happen. So let's start off with empathy. The individual did not feel empathy for others, and even then so elaborated that he thinks that it's a weakness. It's something that was made up. It was constructed. And so here's that video.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but it is very effective.
So that's Charlie Kirk basically saying, that empathy really isn't something that he favors. He doesn't think it's something that we need. Now, mind you, I wasn't able to, in the time period of getting this, video out there. And mind you, I'm recording this video at 11:15, September 14th. So this will air on Monday. So if you're watching this, good morning to you. He also advocated for, a certain sacrifice needs to be made in order to keep what he emphasized as our God-given gun rights. Now, do I agree with what he said? No, I do not. And I feel like a lot of people do not agree with what he said, but it's kind of ironic in the wake of his assassination that his words are speaking louder now, because he basically advocated for this, essentially, if we were to look at it through that lens. And there's only two lenses that you can look at this through the lens that he was a bigot, he was a Nazi, and the lens that he was some Christian who was just some conservative golden boy who was advocating for Christian values. Those are the only two avenues that right now you can travel down. You can travel down the right, or you can travel down the wrong side of trying to understand who this individual is. Now, these are his words, mind you, his words, where he said that there's a certain amount of mass shootings, certain amount of gun related killings that should be justified in order to protect what he classified as God-given rights to Second Amendment. So let's go here.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe. So then how do you reduce? Very simple. People say, oh, Charlie, how do you stop school shootings? I don't know. How did we stop shootings at base?
This is, again, he advocating for mass shootings. There's probably somebody that's watching this that had to live through Columbine. There's probably someone that was alive during Sandy Hook. I was alive during Sandy Hook. There's probably someone alive during the Orlando massacre. There's probably someone alive during the San Bernardino shooting that happened. There's multitudes of shootings that happen. at the hands of what would be classified as extreme white nationalism, shooting up churches. And so he was advocating for this, the shooting of churches, the shooting up of churches, the complete slaughtering of individuals, the what happened in Uvalde, advocating for stuff like that. So I find it very ironic that in the wake of this man's passing, that we have individuals that can't find some understanding to why people aren't feeling some form of sympathy. And we'll get to the selective outrage and the sympathy a little bit later. I just wanted to continue down this path of getting people to really understand who Charlie Kirk, the Nazi, really was. And, since we're moving forward, let's also go on the lines of debunking something or two in things for that matter that he was very stoic about advocating for, which was one, that George Floyd didn't die at the hands of a knee on a neck, which is false. There's two doctors that proved it. I'm going to be showing you guys evidence pretty soon as well with that. Second one is that he advocated for all individuals, even those that had birthright citizenship, to go back to quote unquote their countries. Fix your own countries. Now we're going to get to fix your own countries, that quote, in a minute, but I want you to hear from his voice, from his mouth, the same mouth that sat atop the jugular that was shot. Hear him say exactly verbatim that he doesn't care what America did to these countries or what happened to these countries, that they should just go back because they're a problem. This is what he said.
No, I think Hondurans, Mexicans, Nicaraguans, El Salvadorians, Panamanians, Venezuelans, Chileans, they should all go home.
Oh, really?
If they're here illegally, yes.
But like I said before, these people have been devastated by in the past. These countries are poor.
I don't care. Like, go
Really?
fix your own country. How do we screw up El Salvador? No, tell me. How did we screw up El Salvador? Can anyone tell me? Or is that just a talking point?
What about for the kids?
Go back to your country of origin.
So you would tell me to go back to my country
Well,
right now?
are you born here or not?
I'm born here.
Well,
My
I think we
parents
should
not.
get
They
rid of
were
birthright
illegal.
citizenship, but technically we have it, so you
Me.
should stay. But yes.
But I'm contributing to society. I'm working.
Okay, good for you. I mean,
So then
again,
I should just leave?
I think we should get rid of birthright citizenship.
Oh,
but,
so I'm done.
But
I'm done for.
again, I'm
Give
not
me up
like
Mexico.
I'm not like king, so we don't get rid. But birthright citizenship is a misreading of the birthright clause in the U.S. Constitution. But we have it, so you're going to stay. Don't worry. Okay.
But you want me gone.
But
Do you want me gone?
Well, no, I don't want you.
And he wants them gone. That's exactly what he was alluding to. And to it's funny that they bring up birthright citizenship. It was always in favor for white folks. It was always something that was brung into the limelight for white folks. But I want to talk about how he said, what did we do to El Salvador? Well, you created a puppet government system. You created an institution that was exploiting and has been exploiting and has used what is classified as a Monroe Doctrine that rules over South America, or at least it thinks it can rule over South America. This is all things that you could learn in university and in high school if you actually went to it. Now, Charlie Kirk is an individual that dropped out of high school. He thought that he doesn't believe that they're institutions that are educational because they preach for diverse equity and inclusion, or they preach for critical race theory, or they teach you what you should be taught. This here is the problem, is that he went to over 800 campuses across the nation, across this occupation, and debated with individuals that were actively looking to excel their education, while he was demoralizing them for knowing the truth and for not wanting to distort it in the fact that he did. So again, that was the Monroe Doctrine. That was a doctrine that literally advocates for the settler-colonial behavior to continue in the occupied territories of what is known as the Americas. This is wild. This is wild. And then also, too, a lot of people don't know, but as stated, he advocated that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. That individuals that put out this quote rhetoric that he died of a knee on the neck are only adding fire to the flames of said racism that he thinks is the biggest lie, that racism doesn't exist. This is also coming from a white man who married a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nazi, and has advocated for her to stay home and to be a mother and to not advocate for her to have autonomy, body autonomy, financial autonomy, and physical and mental autonomy over what she wants. And is now preaching that to was preaching that to his children. Now, I'm going to get into something that was a little bit personal that happened to me over the week because, I know that people, are dealing with this in their own little ways. They're coming at this, in the way that they best know how. I'm a Pan-Africanist. I'm anti-fascist at heart. I'm deprogrammed, as a comrade told me. So shout out to RIT. There is no sympathy that's going to come my way for Charlie Kirk. And, if you need a description or a video to prove it, you know how we do it over here on Tin Media.
Not around here, partner. Not around here. Not around here. I ain't believe it.
That's all I got to tell you in this matter. I went through a situation where I had to leave a server on Discord because it just got a little bit too liberal and too tone policing for me in regards to how people of color, POC, BIPOC, indigenous people should feel in the wake of a bigot dying, of a Nazi dying. And I think that brings, before we actually get to that, I'd like to take a break before I break down the George Floyd situation and really to get you guys to understand that the level of colonialism never left. It never left. And I the best way I know how to do that is for me to show you a little bit of brief history that comes from my indigenous upbringing that I was taught, and individuals that have really expressed what colonialism is and how it has affected people across the board. And so I'm going to take a quick 9-minute break for you guys, but the 9-minute break is very contextual to understanding what colonialism has done to us. So again, my name is Isaac Jasper. So if you are enjoying this, please hit the links below, and also at the same exact time, share this out. Make sure people that might want to listen to this can listen to this by giving them that link and that ability to do so. I really appreciate it. And there's also a hype button or something that someone was telling me about that YouTube is rolling out. It's not on my algorithm yet, but if it is on yours, hit that hype and like and notification bell, all that pretty stuff for me, please, because it really does help us out. With that being said, we will be right back after this quick video.
The true history of California has never been told. The history of California is really disgraceful and shameful. California Indian history does not begin with the Spanish expedition coming into California in 1769. California Indian history actually begins with Pope Alexander issuing the papal bull in 1453 that said all indigenous people around the world are heathens, pagans, and savages, that indigenous people have no soul, that indigenous people are the enemies of Christ, that indigenous people were to be put into perpetual slavery, that indigenous people, their property and their possessions were to be taken from them. That's what started it all. There was a number of other papal bulls. I believe there was 4 in total over the next 50 years issued by other subsequent popes as well. The final papal bull gave Portugal the southern hemisphere to go out, conquer, to claim those lands for Portugal and to turn and make them Christian nations. The northern hemisphere was given to Spain so they could claim those lands for Spain and claim them as Christian nations for the Catholic Church. That's where the mission period started from. Then they went into Africa, India, Indonesia, the Pacific Islands, and then the Americas. And that's what brought the missions to California. In 1769, the Portola expedition came up. And that's what opened the way through. When the missions come in, a lot of people think that Junipero Serra was here to evangelize to proselytize, to turn those Indians. Nothing could be further than the truth, from the truth. Junipero Serra came to California to fulfill the dictates of those papal bulls, to take the land, to take the possessions. Junipero Serra was the founder of the California mission system, first of all. He, prior to coming to California, he was in Mexico, and he was working down there with one part of the community he worked with was a Jewish community. They came from Europe, and they brought him to the New World, trying to take the Jewish out of them, and they promised to become Catholic. They were looking for a place to survive. And so whenever he was working with the Jewish in Mexico, he never believed that they truly converted. And so whenever he came to California, he was convinced that he had to break the culture before they would truly convert. And that's why he was so brutal. So when they came here, they looked to destroy our humanity, our spirituality, our culture, and our environment. Well, the way they would capture the Indians, a lot of people talked about, how the Indians came to the missions voluntarily. We have in our oral history, and it's documented as well, of the soldiers would go out and do an early morning raid. They would identify the village site that they were going where they would have the raid, and then the soldiers on horseback would attack that village site, and they would target the women. They would capture the women, and then they would tie them together, thumb to thumb, to form a human chain. Once all the women were captured, they'd start marching them back to the mission. And when they marched back to the mission, they knew the children would naturally follow their mothers. And they knew that it was just a matter of a short period of time before the husbands and the men would come in to be with their families. That's how many of the many Indians were taken to the missions at the beginning of the mission period. Once they got to the mission, they couldn't speak their language. They couldn't wear their clothing. They couldn't sing their songs. The men from the women from the children were separated. That was to break the culture. The children, they did not want the parents passing that knowledge onto the children until the parents were converted or the children were converted to Catholicism. There was whippings, brutality. I said they separated the women. The soldiers did not bring a bunch of their wives or families, and there wasn't a lot of other women here for them. And so they would go into that woman's barracks and just rape the women continuously. There was slavery. There was absolute slavery. The Indians were not allowed to leave. They were totally controlled by the church. That went on to the Mexican period. There was no labor force here. They were giving these huge land grants to the Mexicans who were well connected. And what they would do is they wanted to get these huge ranches with cattle, pigs, horses, sheep. And they were totally ruining the environment of the indigenous peoples, destroying the environment. There was no labor force here. So once again, the Indians were enslaved. There's a story in San Juan Bautista in 1839. One of the Indians tried to run away from one of those ranchos. They ran out and lassoed him by the neck and dragged him all the way back and left his body there to terrorize and put fear into the Indians. That if you run away, this is what's going to happen to you. That was slavery. Then came the American period, the California period. The year that California became a state in 1848, that was the year they discovered gold. Now you have thousands of people from across the United States and around the world coming to California to go stake their claim to their riches. And they're going up into the mountains, and the Indians were trying to protect their lands and prevent people from going to their lands. So all of a sudden we have an Indian problem. The federal government had a solution, and the California government had a solution. The federal government they negotiated treaties, 18 treaties for all California tribes, covering 8.5 million acres north to south. Our tribe signed that treaty. The commissioners that were sent to negotiate those treaties signed. They were sent to Washington to be ratified. The state of California did not want those treaties to be signed. They passed a resolution to oppose the ratification of those treaties. And then they sent a delegation of California state senators to lobby against the treaties being ratified. After a period of time, the governor ordered that those treaties be sealed for 50 years, and they were never signed. Our treaties that we signed were sabotaged by the state of California. The state of California had their own plan. They wanted extermination. The governor in the very first State of the Union said that there will be a war against the California Indians. That is to be expected. That was their plan. A couple years later, they passed one of the very first treasury bonds that was paid by the state of California was to pay for the extermination of California Indians. Today, they issue bonds for railroad improvement, for waterways, for housing, for schools, for parks. But can you imagine issuing a bond to pay for the extermination of California Indians? They were paid bounty money. They were paid 25 cents to $5 bounty. It was pretty average for every dead Indian. They paid militias rather, to go up in the mountains to find the Indians and to kill them. They were paying people to hunt down human beings to kill them. After that period of time, they passed laws where they could kidnap the children, because once again they're trying to take the Indian out of the children. It wasn't uncommon for them to kill the parents and take the children in and sell them. The prices that I hear are boys typically would sell for $150, and they were used for very hard labor. Girls, there wasn't a lot of females. There wasn't a lot of women here in California for the men that were here. And so girls, they sold for a higher price. They were sold for $300. And they were sold for very bad purposes to be used by those people in most cases. There was indentured servitude. Indentured servitude is slavery. There's records of Indians being enslaved in California into the 1930s. That's less than 100 years ago. People were born. People are alive today when there was legalized Indian slavery here in California. This history is never told.
Exactly. This history is never told. Again, my name is Isaac Jasper. If you're just tuning in during that break, welcome to Tin Media, preferably exactly to the Indigenous Nightmare podcast, where I kind of have my little solo discussions, bringing this back to the network. I know I told you guys that I wanted to start off with George Floyd, but I want to kind of, pivot for a little bit, or keep us on the track that was going with this video this break is that colonialism never left, and yet we have people here that want us to feel sympathy for someone that was advocating for the continuation of that said colonialism, and people understand that. And we have another set of people that are dumbfounded at the fact that individuals are not feeling sympathy as anti-fascists for a Nazi. And so I want people to really understand that Indigenous people in the midst of all of this hearing, people cry sympathy and cry love and condolences for a Nazi. We see right through it. We see right through that. And we've been going through this level of extermination and this level of dehumanization for a very long time now. And I think, the assassination of this bigot, put us in a position to where we are moving forward knowing that there are less people that we thought were on our side than there were. And, it'll take time, I think, and with time, that narrative will change and it'll wither away, because there's that small clustering of individuals that really understand, that are from the white diaspora, that understand anti-colonialism, have been living under oppressive systems themselves as well, have been marginalized by the system, will start to come out of the woodworks and say, hey, I think people of color are right in this regard. You're telling them to literally cry for a Nazi. And so I wanted to, get us back to George Floyd before we get to the dehumanization and selective outrage that we've been seeing as of late. In brief, because again, like I said, I wanted to make this episode really short because a lot of this I want to keep for when I sit down with Zanab. We had George Floyd, or we had Charlie Kirk state that George Floyd died of an overdose. No, he didn't. These are two doctors right here that have alluded to exactly what happened. Exactly what happened is that as a result of a knee on his neck, he died. If that knee was not on his neck and there wasn't an extensive use of unneeded force against him, this wouldn't have never have happened. And we have so many people making up lies. I remember someone tried to say that a Palestinian called the cops on George Floyd. That's a lie. That never happened. That never happened. So, with the evidence in front of us, it's kind of clear, what they're trying to do and what they've been trying to do for a very long time, which is dehumanize people of color and their lives, their lived experiences, for the betterment of the exploitive measures that come with imperialism. They're completely fine with that. They're completely fine with dehumanizing people of color, trans people, even in the wake of this. The shooter's roommate is trans, and somehow, some way, because you have a trans roommate, that gets you to want to shoot somebody. No, I think when you say things, chickens come home to roost. And that's exactly what happened in this case. I don't feel sorry. I don't feel sympathy, for anybody, especially after the way that his wife was talking. And I've seen with my own eyes that the level of evilness that is in this woman, and how this movement being bought the day after by Ben Shapiro, another white supremacist, eugenicist, a Zionist, a defender of Israel, a defender of ethnic cleansing, has said the same things that Charlie Kirk has said, that this needs to happen. Remember when Charlie Kirk said that they need to bomb Iran? This is wild. So I don't show sympathy for those that don't show sympathy and never have for me, my people, or any of us that have been oppressed by the system that they want to prop up. And I think it's very simple. And I think with that, being said, the level of dehumanization is disgusting. And I think the level of selective outrage is disgusting that we're seeing. Like I said, I left a Discord full of individuals that were great, wonderful, but I leave myself in a position where when this stuff happens, you showed your true colors. People are showing their true colors right now, sending condolences. And these are people that have children, have daughters. Mind you, he said if his daughter was pregnant and was raped, he'd have her have that baby to term. Let's not also forget 727 articles of legislation that was pushed and rolled out by Turning Point USA, one of which was responsible for a Black woman being left to decompose and rot on life support, already dead and confirmed, so that she can go to term or meet the baby's term so that the baby can then have medical complications. This is the same individual that called Breonna Taylor, and I quote, a whore. He called George Floyd a drug addict. He said that Black women were less intelligent than white women. I don't really understand how you can have a demographic of people that have been oppressed by not just his words, but also the actions that have came through the legislation that was rolled out by that demonic institution that he has created, which has over 800 chapters across the nation. This is wild. What's also wild is that while he was at these campuses talking about gun violence, he became the 427th member of a list of individuals that have been shot and killed and murdered at the hands of gun violence. Going back to what he said, the sacrifice for him in his eyes was justified. So why are we sitting here feeling sympathy? Unless you're a racist, unless you're a bigot, unless you have some underlying feelings of sympathy for racism and for racist people, You cannot call yourself anti-fascist and then cry for a fascist when they die. That's not how this world was meant to be. You have classified yourself as what everybody was looking at you as a liberal, because this is what liberals do in the tone and in the facet of this political, spectrum that we live under, this duopoly of fascism. Because I know that there is a term liberalism and liberal that could be used and classified in a different manner, and I'm very interested in learning that and learning from others about that, and have been learning in the midst of this time, taking the time off and whatnot. But it's just very clear who you are. You're either a closeted racist, a closeted bigot, or you're just someone who is so naive and is so predicated on feeling sympathy for those that wouldn't feel sympathy for you. And I know there's some people out there that are saying, well, I'm a Christian, I'm a God-fearing man, woman, and I don't really believe in public executions. I don't really believe in political, quote unquote, political violence. Okay, I understand that. I think, but where people of color are not really understanding where people that aren't of color are coming from is that we had to watch our diaspora, every single individual that advocated for equal rights for our people and for others, be martyred. The list goes on. Medgar Evers, he was shot in the back. It wasn't until decades until, justice was even handed. And even then, could you call that justice? H. Rap Brown talks about, law versus justice. What really is justice under an imperialist system? We have Dr. King. We have Malcolm X. We have Fred Hampton, who was drugged so much that it could knock out an elephant. Where was this outrage? Where is the outrage? Oh, mind you, also, where's the outrage for the actual kids that had to see their parents die at the hands of institutionalized systemic police violence, political violence, being individuals that were targeted by state-sanctioned violence, COINTELPRO? Where's that outrage at? Where's the outrage for Assata Shakur as she's sitting right now in exile? Where's that outrage? Where is the outrage for the individuals that have had to live decades behind bars for simply advocating for the truth, like Leonard Peltier, who gave 50 years, a half of a century of his life for the betterment of making sure that people understand the truth needs to be told and justice needs to be served? Where is the outrage for Mumia Abu-Jamal, who sits right now in prison, in solitary confinement as a political prisoner for simply telling the truth, and they framed a murder on him? Where is the outrage for Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly known as H. Rap Brown, who used to go to areas in Georgia and really inflict fear into bigots, into individuals that were inflicting fear into the African diaspora? Where is the outrage for him, who is sitting behind bars and is innocent for what they say he has done? Where is all of this outrage? It is nowhere to be seen, but you expect people of color to feel something for a Nazi. That is like telling people who are bound by the constraints of Auschwitz to cry when Hitler died. No. This individual wrote out legislation. He worked with whole entire oligarchs. He worked with eugenicists. Charlie Kirk was no good man. Charlie Kirk was no good individual. He woke up every day and chose hate. He woke up every day and chose to be a bigot. I don't do that, and I would never do that. And the fact that we have people that have institutionalized and manipulated in other individuals from other diasporas to think this way, and then to classify us as individuals that are advocating for political violence when we say we don't care, or saying we shouldn't make fun of it. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Charlie Kirk that went to every single university and told every single person out there to test the knee on the neck method in regards to George Floyd, who actually died from that. Let's not refute also that they went and they funded for autopsies to be ran and redone on George Floyd so that they can say that he did not die of that and that he died of a drug overdose. These are the people that we work against, not for, not with. And in the midst of this, we do not treat this like this is a game of chess. We do not treat this like this is a game of snakes and ladders, Monopoly. We treat this as such, as this is life. And these are people that wanted to alienate others from living their life, subjugating them, oppressing them, and expecting them to be good for it. This is ridiculous. This is senile. I will be right back after this break, you guys.
Who support Zionism. If you're a non-Jew Zionist, then my question would be, why do you hate Jews so much? Or why do you support the hatred of Jews? Why do you promote the hatred of Jews? Why don't you work against the hatred of Jews? Because there's nothing more anti-Semitic, there's nothing more anti-Jew than Zionism, especially among non-Jews. Because the whole basis of Zionism is the idea that Jews aren't safe in any country in the world, and therefore they need a Jewish homeland. They need a Jewish state, because that's the only place that they can be safe from you. So if you say that you support Jews having a homeland, you are implicitly saying Jews aren't safe with you. Jews aren't safe in your country. That's implicitly what you're saying. Your support for Jews, or your love for Jews, is not love for Jews, it's love for Jews to be elsewhere. You're saying implicitly, when you say that you support the state of Israel, and you support the Jews having a Jewish homeland, and you declare your support for Zionism, you're declaring your hatred for Jews. You're declaring that, yes, Jews are not safe in my country. Jews are not safe from me and my friends and my community and the citizenry of my country. Because that's why they need to be elsewhere, because we can't be trusted. So either you should be offended by the fundamental claim of Zionism. You should be offended by that. And if you're not offended by it, then it's because it's true and the Jews are not safe with you. Because if you had any, if you were a decent human being who didn't hate Jewish people, then the claim that the Jews can't be safe in your country would be offensive to you. And that the Jews aren't safe anywhere in the world would be offensive to you, because it's an insult. It's an insult to your whole society to say that the Jews can't be safe with you and therefore they need to be somewhere else. But you see, the thing is, like I've said before, it's true. You do hate Jews. The West has always hated Jews. Jews have never been safe in the West. And after the Holocaust, after the anti-Jewish sentiment across Europe that's been going on for centuries, after that reached a crescendo with the Holocaust, you just figured out another way, a more sophisticated way to make life miserable for the Jews. You figured out another way to keep the Jews in danger and insecurity. And you figured out a way, this is remarkable, you figured out a way to make the only people in history who didn't hate and persecute them, hate them. Because the Muslims never hated the Jews. The Muslims didn't persecute the Jews. The Jews were safe with the Muslims. But you found a way to make endless animosity, unending animosity between the Muslims and the Jews, between the Arabs and the Jews, by turning what should have been immigration into colonization. Because the Jews were always safe and free to emigrate to Palestine. And they did. Where do you think they went when you kicked them out of Spain? They went to the Ottoman Empire. Many of them went to Palestine. And they were welcomed there and they were safe there. The only people that were ever kind to them, the only people that were ever benevolent to them, the only people that didn't persecute them and hate them for being Jews was the Muslims. You hated Jews for what they are. You hated Jews for being Jews. But you made them do things by turning immigration, what should have been immigration, you turned it into colonization. And so we started to hate them because of what they did. We started to hate them for what they do. The Muslims started to hate them because of their actions. You hated them always for what they are, for their being, for their belief, for their religion. We didn't. We never did. We always had respect for them. So you just found a way to make your anti-Jewish hatred more sophisticated, and you found a way to put the Jews into endless problems by sending them to Palestine as colonizers instead of as immigrants. Sending them to Palestine with the dream of taking over Palestine by violence, which is how they took it over, by violence and massacre of women and children. Deir Yassin, for example. They took it over by terrorism. They took it over by thuggery. And that was with your backing, because you wanted to make a problem for the Jews. You wanted to make a problem for them, and then a problem for us. And you wanted to destroy the only friend that they ever had in this world, which was the Muslims. And even now, with everything that's been going on, and everything that's been going on for the last 70 years, even now, who's the one who's actually suing for a ceasefire? Who's the one that's actually trying to pursue peace, and who's reacting to this conflict right now with diplomacy and not with aggression? It's the Muslims. And who is vetoing the calls for a ceasefire? You people. Because you hate Jews. You want them to be in a problem. You want them to be insecure. You want them to be in danger. You want them to be in conflict. You don't want them to be friends with the only friends that they ever had. You want them to be enemies. You don't want there to be anywhere safe for the Jews. And like I said, when you say that you support Zionism, you are implicitly saying that the Jews are never going to be safe in your country. The Jews are never going to be safe in your society. And then the only place that they ever were safe was in the Muslim world, and you have arranged it in such a way, you engineered it in such a way that they can't even be safe there now because of the way they came and the way they behaved with your backing. If they hadn't had your backing and they hadn't been instigated by you with this sick ideology of Zionism, they could have come to Palestine and just been neighbors. They could have come to Palestine and just become Jewish Palestinians. In Palestine, Jewish immigrants were always welcome, but colonizers were not welcome. And you decided that they should be colonizers just to create more problems and to create problems for the Jews in the only part of the world where they never had problems. So Zionism is just the perfection of anti-Semitism. It's the refinement of anti-Semitism. It's the pinnacle of anti-Jewish hatred.
All right. We are back, and I wanted to just, conclude with my analysis regarding Charlie Kirk, regarding the selective outrage. I want to kind of save a lot of this for when I sit down with Zanab Day. Again, if you're tuning in just now, I'm getting ready to conclude, making my last remarks regarding the situation. You can go back and watch this episode. It was a good one for me to conduct and produce for you guys, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. Regarding, lastly, the selective outrage, it's completely disgusting. The same way that Shahid Bolson in this video just has described the ideological understanding of what needs to happen in Palestine, and how people when they say certain things like Jews need a homeland, they are inferring that they're not safe where they should always be safe, which is where they're from, and just the sheer manipulation that comes with getting people to believe that it is justifiable for what we're seeing in 4K and a whole entire genocide. I mind you, it's disgusting to see people try at the same exact time get us to feel sympathy for an individual that advocated for this in the name of Charlie Kirk. I think that level of ignorance and arrogance is really telling. It puts individuals in a position of frustration and sheer madness at the magnitude of individuals that are lighter shades of brown, that are from the diaspora, that are non-white, that are individuals that are white, that are propagating this stuff. I mean, from Dean Withers crying about this, and I gave my statement under his comments that the only reason he was crying was because his dark revenue stream had ended. He was equivalent to his Lex Luthor, to his Batman, or to his Superman. This individual idolized someone like him, and vice versa. Charlie Kirk talked about how Dean Withers was, probably the one that he liked the most. So, Dean hearing something like that, and crying the way that he did, it's very fitting. But at the same time, who was Dean Withers before he was this, miraculous debater about human rights with Eli Parker, who was also at the event, mind you, Utah Valley University, where Charlie Kirk got shot. He said that he was 40 feet away. I jokingly responded to him, basically saying that I really don't give a shit, and you shouldn't have gave a shit either. But being that you are part of that same group of individuals, of creators, content creators that were paid by Chorus to propagate Democratic talking points, it's only fitting that, you're upset and that you're crying that you lost your Lex Luthor to your Superman. This is very clear. Dean Withers was an individual who, used to propagate $1 million within Gucci bags and complain if someone had less than $1 million that they were poor, and that he used to take private jets to go and eat ramen and sit in G-Wagons. This is an individual who has grifted off of political manipulation and cultural demonization at the same exact time. Unfuck America was nothing more than that. It was them trying to unfuck something that they knew nothing about. In order to unfuck America, quote unquote, you need to invoke anti-fascism. You need to not cry when a fascist gets shot in the jugular. You need to not invoke tone policing when people of color want to celebrate a Nazi dying. And it's not even just being anti-fascist at this point. It's individuals that, again, were affected, people of color that were affected by this individual. They are trying to have us feel sympathy for. This is disgusting. This is arrogant. This is ignorant. And it's not something that I myself will ever invoke onto any individual. He was a Nazi. May he rest in hell. And may also this video serve right to who he was. And if so, if you do not believe who he was and what he was about, I'm going to exit out of here, and I'm going to let 3 minutes and 22 seconds play out of him saying some of the most egregious shit I have ever heard someone say in my entire life regarding all people of color, regarding individuals of certain genders. This is disgusting. So with that being said, like, share, subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and exit myself out of here. I'm going to let this video play. Subscribe to our Patreon if you like what you hear and like what you see. I do make myself, I doll myself up, look pretty for you guys. So, it is what it is. With that being said, though, I'm going to exit myself out. I'll see you guys in the next.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. The Civil Rights Act was a mistake. More cops should be around your neighborhood. Why do blacks have a broken family? White person were to come up and say, black America really needs to get its act together and stop sleeping around all the time, and needs to actually have enough.
Why would you?
Because it's true. When blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today, they were less murderous. There was less break-ins. Black America is worse than it has been in the last 80 years. What percentage of young blacks have both a mom and a dad raising them? Of course we pander to blacks. They're in every TV commercial. And they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? Things got worse since the Civil Rights Act. More violent, less fathers around, poorer.
Why are we making racist jokes?
Look, it's a comedian that was put up on stage.
Yeah,
what do you expect? But I mean, man, can you take a joke?
You should be kissing the ground with gratitude, because you're right. You are not in Africa, and you should be thankful you're not in Africa. Certain skin color now gets their own summertime celebration. It's now become a racial complaining day. BLM, and remember what BLM stands for: burn, loot, and murder. America is poorer today than before we tried to start to help them. Black women married the government and divorced the men that they were once with.
Happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday.
Half of all prisoners are black.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crime. They commit more murders. They commit more arsons. They commit more kidnappings. It's not a profiling when it comes to that. Blacks are far more likely to commit crimes than any other group. See a black pilot, you wonder, boy, is that person there because they earned it or because they were placed there? When blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today, They were less murderous.
Death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI.
Black culture has collapsed the last 60 years. Systemic racism stuff is a bunch of rubbish. Instead, it's systemic bad choices.
Do you feel that systemic racism isn't real?
Of course not.
What do you feel about the black community receiving reparations?
I'm against that. Yeah.
With the George Floyd protests,
Riots.
We have a supply and demand issue with racism in our country. We have an incredibly low supply of racism and an incredible demand to try to fulfill it. So we've created racism where it doesn't exist.
When I was being schooled, we have spent an entire month on slavery. Totally get it. Terrible thing. But we spent so little time on the brilliance of the founders and what they've created.
Is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with as many girls? Time for us to stop listening to rap music and this degenerate hip-hop stuff.
Can you clarify your definition of critical race theory?
Call everything racist till you control it.
And we decided to basically usher in the Civil Rights Act as a new anti-racist dogma, creed, and I find something fundamentally wrong with that.
What would you say is the biggest non-issue that people make out to be a massive issue?
Okay, great. So I would say, it's not a surprise what I would say, racism.